Welcome to my first Outriders build guide. I'm LtBuzzLitebeer, and today I'm going to be showing you an assault-style Pyromancer build that will literally melt through content, allowing you to both progress through the story and in-game content very quickly. But before we begin the build breakdown, in case you haven't yet smashed that sub button for Outriders content, including lore, builds, and trailers, please do so. And don't forget to ring the bell to never miss a future upload notification from my YouTube channel. This build breakdown for the assault-style Pyromancer is for both fresh playthroughs or for players that have already made it to the endgame content and are looking to really squeeze as much out of their CT builds as possible. Now, as I have personally been progressing through the challenge tiers, my pieces and builds have been constantly changing as I have been searching for the perfect pieces. But with this guide, I will give you the basics and examples for the blueprint you want to follow as you hunt down the necessary gear. Let's go ahead and start off with the skill tree. First up is the Pyro node itself, and it gives you the basics of the class. Melee skills inflict burn damage, and your healing mechanic is whenever you kill a marked enemy, you will recover 24% of your max health. So right out of the gate, Pyro class is a bit behind the other classes, and that this isn't like Technomancer that gets health for just inflicting damage. Pyro has to not only mark the target, but it has to get the kill in order to get health returned. So with this build, we will not only need to address our damage output, partially through the skill tree and mostly through the gear and mods, but we will also need to address survivability, so we don't get folded in CT content. First class point you want to spend as we make our way through the Ashbreaker path is Inferno Weapon, which is going to give us 8% weapon damage, and you'll see how this all kind of meshes together in a bit. But essentially, we're going to rely on our weapon to get us quick kills through the use of Volcanic Rounds, setting targets on fire, and then applying ash. Here is your first branch in the skill tree, and you can either go with Marble Orchard to reduce those cooldowns on immobilized skills by 15%, or with Moths to the Flame for 5% weapon leech. Now, I haven't showed you my skills yet, but I am going to be using Feed the Flames quite a bit, so I have gone with Marble Orchard. Next up is Mark of the Anomaly that is going to give the build plus 10% weapon damage against marked enemies. Remember that this build is built around trying to maintain 100% uptime with our Volcanic Rounds, so marking enemies will not be a problem, and will mean we should have this procced all the time. From here, go ahead and grab the Assault Master node, as a 20% assault weapon damage boost is too good to pass up. Now, this build is tailor-made for automatic weaponry with those Volcanic Rounds, so this is a no-brainer. We've hit another fork in the skill tree, and here's the first place you could really make a mistake. At first glance, Blood Boil sounds like the point you want to unlock, as plus 10% armor piercing sounds decent, and it is, but not when you are using Volcanic Rounds, because in the very definition for this ammo type it says, if the bullet hits, it causes skill damage, ignoring armor and piercing the target, damaging others behind them. So this is clearly a wasted point if you unlock Blood Boil. Instead, take Trial of the Ashes for the 10% more damage versus enemies afflicted with ash, because with this build, you will be doing this quite often. Next point, pretty easy, we are again taking Mark of the Anomaly for another 10% weapon damage versus marked targets. From here, you've got several large nodes you can go for. Hot Situation increases anomaly power by 45% for 10 seconds after activating an immobilized skill. Now, since we aren't really going for that with this build, and our anomaly power is really going to be pretty low, don't go for this. Also, FYI, Volcanic Rounds don't scale off of anomaly power with the Pyro class, so this node will do nothing for our damage output. Instead, go down and grab Incinerate, as the moment burn ends on an enemy, it inflicts ash status. Now, what we are going for is a burn status effect that lasts for 5 to 6 to 7 seconds, and then a brief delay, hopefully the shortest, which is 5 seconds, will apply ash to those targets. An example is when you get rushed by a huge mob, you could just spray across them, catching them all on fire with the Volcanic Rounds, and then once that burn wears off, it will turn to ash, and that's where you really crank up your damage output. Next fork in the skill tree, and we can either go with Curse of the Pompeii for 15% longer ash durations, or Conflagration, which will give us 15% more resistance piercing. Now, they both sound pretty good, but I decided to go with Conflagration for the extra resistance piercing. Remember, Volcanic Rounds already pass through armor, but they are mitigated by resistances, so anything we can do to make sure they are hitting with full impact is important. We are again at Mark of the Anomaly for another 10% weapon damage versus marked enemies. From here, if you wanted to use sniper weaponry, you have a chance to unlock the Sniper Master node. I'm going in a different direction with this build, so I stayed away from this one. Next fork in the skill tree, and we are again met with Blood Boil or Inferno Weapon. And we will again take Inferno Weapon just like we did the last time we saw these choices. Mark of the Anomaly again for another 10% weapon damage, and from here you can either go up to Moths of the Flame for 5% weapon leech or down to Ashes. Now since we are going for sheer damage output, the choice is clear: Ashes to Ashes. It doesn't say it anywhere in the node text, but since every time ash is applied to an enemy, vulnerable is also applied, and here is the part that is not mentioned. Anytime vulnerable is applied to a target, that target will take an extra 25% more damage, and this procs for both solo and squad play. Nimble as a Flame will really serve us no purpose because we're not reloading, but we need it to get to the end of this skill tree. Hurt Twice as Long increases our damage output by 10% to elites and also reduces incoming damage from elites by 10%. Again, another branch in the skill tree, and we can either go with Marble Orchard or Trial of the Ashes. Now we've already discussed this one and why, so go with Trial of the Ashes. And hopefully you can see where this build concept is going, with the combination of the Volcanic Rounds, burning enemies, and then applying ash, which is constantly stacking through this skill tree and then through the use of the Feed the Flame skill. Burning Situation will finish up this line of the skill tree, and at 45% weapon damage for 10 seconds after activating an immobilized skill, this is a monster damage gain. So anytime we can hit that Feed the Flames on targets, because it is an immobilized skill, we are not only applying all the ash stack bonuses, but this 45% Burning Situation buff as well. Okay, so now we still have 4 points yet to spend, and you could either go and fill in some of the gaps in this Ash Breaker skill tree, but let me show you a better way to spend those points. Instead, I would jump down to the bottom of the skill tree and grab Archmage, World Ablaze for more explosive skill cooldown, Archmage again, but this will give us access to the With Fire and Rifle node for the 35% weapon damage for activating an explosive skill. Now, if you don't want to go this route, you could go back up into the Ashbreaker line and grab some Moths to the Flame nodes and maybe some Leeching Force or lower skill cooldowns. But since I'm using Overheat, that 35% is a super strong buff, but it's really up to you where you want to spend those final 4 points. Maybe Weapon Leech or Immobilized cooldowns are your thing. There's some flexibility for you to customize it any which way you want to. So we pretty much addressed the damage output portion of this build through the skill tree. So next, we need to look over at the weaponry, gear, and mods with 2 main focuses and 1 minor one. We need survivability. We need to look for ways to keep 100% uptime with Volcanic Rounds, or else this build simply doesn't work, and we need to try and boost our damage output any chance we get. First up in this list is survivability, and for that we're going to use mods to really beef up our builds. Mods can be found on gear and weaponry, and by deconstructing those pieces, you will forever save that mod into your library so it can then be added to any piece of gear you want at any time. Now for sheer survivability, here are the best mods to concentrate on. Protection from the Flames grants bonus armor for marking targets, which your Volcanic Rounds will do for you, and will also give you resistance protection for 10 seconds and can stack up to 3 times. Blazing Aegis is another good one, as it stacks bonus armor for killing targets afflicted with burn and will again stack up to 3 times. Damage Absorber is an excellent survivability talent, as it essentially doubles your armor with no requirements to proc and will also boost your resistance by 10%. Emergency Stance is like a get out of jail free card, as you will sometimes be in combat and then all of a sudden see a huge drop in your health, and that is where this mod kicks in. Once procced, it will wrap your character in a shield of rock for 4 seconds and allow you to retreat and attempt to heal up. This mod is super clutch when you are in a bad position and are being flanked. And finally, Mitigation from Death grants large bonus armor bonuses for killing targets while aiming down the sights. Now these armor bonuses last for 10 seconds and can stack up to 3 times. Let's next turn our attention to mods that can help keep those volcanic rounds procced and doing the extra damage. Extra Mag is actually a tier 1 skill mod, but it can be useful at keeping the volcanic rounds active, as it allows the rounds to stay active for 1 additional magazine before triggering the skill cooldown. Next up, and it doesn't make much sense right now, but I'll explain in a minute, but Vampiric Mag is a tier 2 mod that replenishes 50% of your magazine for killing targets marked with bleed. Or, if you don't have access to these mods, or can't yet fit one of them into your build, a tier 2 weapon talent to look into is Perpetuum Mobile, which will instantly refill your magazine if you kill an enemy while at 35% or less ammo remaining in your magazine. Now this mod does work, but you will need to balance hitting harder targets like bosses with the smaller, more vulnerable targets in order to keep this mod procced. So we've covered survivability and also keeping those volcanic rounds active as much as possible, so let's finish up this build with beefing up our damage output. Since we plan on getting in close to our targets and staying there, Personal Space gives us a flat 15% bonus to close range weapon damage. Bullet Kindling is an excellent mod that grants us 20% more weapon damage against targets afflicted with burn, which is basically everything we shoot with volcanic rounds. Now, if you decided to pair this build with an assault rifle, Dum Dum Bullets will give you a flat damage boost for choosing that weapon class. And one mod that I use that doesn't just jump off the page is Vein Ripper, because critical shots inflict bleed on targets. Remember back when I mentioned the Vampiric Mag mod? Well, I run these as a combo instead of a mod on my weapon to return ammo to my magazine. Once I have applied the Bleed Affliction with a critical strike, it not only burns down the target, it gives me 50% ammo back to my magazine just for killing that target. For the weaponry, I've chosen a beefy legendary LMG, but you don't have to use this exact weapon. What you are looking for is close range damage on your attributes, and then one mod that I've been thoroughly enjoying is Crematorium, which is a tier 2 weapon mod. Killing shots create an explosion that inflicts ash on enemies within a 7-meter range. Now you know from how we spec'd out our skill tree that anytime we target and kill something afflicted with ash, our damage bonuses spike, and here is a weapon mod that actually creates mini ash explosions. I mean, the damage output once this build is up and chugging out kills is truly impressive. Before we go any further, one thing I wanted to mention when it comes to modding your gear is that you basically want to stay away from any of the tier 1 skill enhancement mods, as they are basically worthless to this build. Other than the Extra Mag mod for the volcanic rounds or the Wide Grip mod for the Feed the Flames, I would steer clear of any of these for your build. Also, for the attributes on your gear, you are looking for 3 things: bonus firepower, cooldown reduction, and close range damage. I know it's really hard to find the right pieces with the right attributes and the correct mods, but that is what farming is for. If anything, try to avoid anomaly power or status power, because they can both be counterproductive to this build. The last portion of this Assault Pyro build are the skills, and I thought it would be pretty clear that we are totally dedicated to using volcanic rounds. The bonus damage and just sheer damage gains are insane and far outweigh any other damage type for quick and consistent kills. Feed the Flames is an excellent immobilize skill that pulls off a bit of health and can keep you sustained, but the ash infliction it applies is the real gem of this skill. Overheat can be really effective once you've sprayed down a mob with burn and then the explosion effect hits the targets with some quick burst damage. However, the reason you want to use this skill is for that massive weapon damage bonus you receive when you spec'd into with Fire and Rifle that grants us plus 35% weapon damage boost once we activate an explosive skill. Well, there it all is, and hopefully I've made it as clear and easy to follow as possible. As always, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section below and I'll do my best to answer them. If you haven't yet smashed that sub button for more Outriders content, please do so. And don't forget to ring the bell to never miss another upload notification from my YouTube channel. If you could take the time to rate and or share this video, it would be appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitch for weekly streams, join my community Discord server, and of course, find me over on Twitter posting on most things gaming related. Until the next one, this is LtBuzzLitebeer signing off.